They fired me to protect my sister, but they didn't know I held the keys to the entire kingdom. 3 people stood behind that betrayal. My sister Haley, my manager Greg, and my oldest friend Dana. They looked proud of themselves as security took my badge like I was some intern being escorted out for stealing staplers. Didn't protest, I just smiled because they had just fired the majority owner of their company. If you've ever been overlooked, dismissed, or betrayed by the people closest to you, this story is for you. Hit like, leave a comment, and subscribe, because this is the kind of revenge that speaks in silence. Just 6 months ago, I was Noah Green, 32, working quietly in the IT department of a manufacturing firm in Louisville. The guy who got called when the printers jammed, or the conference screen froze during board meetings. No one noticed me. Except when something broke. Haley got hired through me. I vouched for her, coached her through the interview, and even trained her. She was fresh out of grad school and eager. But the moment she started dating the COO's nephew, everything shifted. Suddenly, I was being left out of internal memos, access revoked, projects reassigned, and then came the final blow, a falsified report accusing me of leaking client data. The complaint? Filed by Haley. HR didn't even blink. Noah, you understand. It's best for everyone, Greg said, like he wasn't throwing me under the bus to save face. What none of them knew was that I'd spent the last 7 years building a separate company, StoneArc Systems, focused on secure industrial software. Quietly, through a series of mergers and acquisitions, I began buying out shares of their firm, all under a corporate name no one ever traced back to me. The final transaction closed just 8 days before they fired me. StoneArc now owned 72% of the company, and I owned StoneArc. But I kept it quiet. I needed to see the truth. And Haley did. So when they fired me, I let them throw their little celebration, balloons, cake, fake toasts. 2 days later, I walked into the boardroom. No fanfare, just the legal documents. I'm not here to get my job back, I told them. I'm here to take control. And just like that, the party was over. Haley walked in wearing a $3,500 0-cent emerald dress, like she'd just stepped off a runway, and into power. Dana, my former best friend, stood beside her, champagne in hand, laughing like she hadn't just helped orchestrate my downfall. They were celebrating, toasting their new positions, talking about fresh leadership and strategic transitions. What they didn't know was that I'd already scheduled a mandatory board meeting, under my legal name, set for exactly 7:00 p.m. Subject, emergency ownership review. Attendance required. Haley frowned when her phone buzzed. Why is the board calling a meeting without telling me? She asked. Greg, our manager, shrugged. Maybe it's about your promotion. You're finally going to be named CTO. She grinned. But that smile wouldn't survive the next hour. The boardroom was stiff with confusion when I walked in. No name badge, no fanfare. Haley's jaw unhinged. Dana dropped her glass. The CEO, our uncle, asked Singleton. Noah? What the hell are you doing here? I didn't answer. I just walked to the head of the table and sat down. Calm. Confident. Then I slid a thick envelope to the board's attorney. These are the official ownership documents. I recommend you read them aloud. The lawyer looked puzzled, until he opened the file. His face drained of color. According to this, he said slowly, a holding company named StoneArc Systems has acquired 72% of the firm's stock. He turned toward me. And you are listed as the sole owner? Silence. This is a joke, Haley whispered. He's just tipped. I looked her dead in the eye. Correction. I was your IT guy. Now I'm the reason your office has lights. Dana stared like I'd grown horns. Uncle Thomas stood up, sputtering. You manipulated this entire company behind our backs. No, I replied. I just played the game you all taught me. You just didn't expect the quiet one to win. Haley's hands were trembling. Greg looked like he'd swallowed a brick. And I leaned back in the chair that now belonged to me. Then Mr. Clark, a senior board member, cleared his throat. Noah, Are you saying you've been acquiring this company piece by piece for years? I gave a small nod. Exactly. 5 years of silence. While they mocked me, overlooked me, pushed me into the background, I was buying the company one share at a time. Haley slammed her hand on the table. This is absurd. You were the guy in the corner. You didn't even speak up in meetings. How could you do all this? I met her glare. Because while you were chasing job titles and office gossip, I was building a legacy. The board's lawyer confirmed every detail. The documents were airtight, legal, valid, irreversible. And then I dropped the second bomb. I'm not here just to own the company, I said, rising to my feet. I'm here to clean it up. I slid a second folder across the table. Thick, heavy, damning. Inside, email chains, financial records, forged reports. At the very top, Haley Green's name. She lunged for the folder, eyes scanning the pages in disbelief. This is revenge, she hissed. You're doing this because I climbed faster than you. No, I said, calm as stone. I'm doing this because you lied. Because you sabotaged someone who once protected you. And because this company deserves better. Dana spoke up next, her voice shaky. Noah, we've been friends since high school. Don't do this. I turned to her, unblinking. Real friends don't throw you under the bus for a corner office. You made a choice, Dana. Now you live with it. The board had no say. My 72% ownership gave me complete voting authority. In less than 10 minutes, the resolution passed. Haley, Dana, and Greg were officially removed from their roles. But I wasn't done. From my briefcase, I pulled out 3 sealed envelopes. I walked to each of them and handed them over, one by one. Your severance packages, I said. Consider these your final paychecks. Haley's voice cracked. You can't just erase us like this. I stared right through her. You erased me the day you let HR walk me out. This is just balance. And then I walked out of the boardroom. Steady. Silence. For the first time in years, every eye followed me. If you've ever been counted out, quietly built your own power, or dreamed of a moment when the truth would speak for itself, hit that subscribe button. Because this isn't the end of my story, it's just the part where they realize I was never the underdog. And what happens next will change everything. As I reached the boardroom door, I paused and glanced over my shoulder. Oh, and that company retreat next month in Belize, I said with a faint smile. Still happening, just not with you. I thought that was it. I thought removing them was the end. But I severely underestimated how far desperation could push people. 3 days later, the calls began. No voice, just silence. Weighted, unsettling silence. Then came the emails. Untraceable addresses, threats, accusations of fraud, fake legal claims, allegations that made no sense. At first, I brushed it off, noise from bitter people. But then, someone broke into my downtown condo. Nothing was stolen, but my laptop, my encrypted laptop, was open. My private files had been accessed. Message, loud and clear. I checked the building's security system. The keycard log showed entry with one of the old internal access badges. One I hadn't used since I was just the IT guy. Only 2 people still had back-end clearance to that system. Haley and Dana. That's when it clicked. They weren't just angry. They were unraveling. Later I learned Haley had tried launching a startup using stolen fragments of our proprietary code, data she smuggled out before being fired. But when investors did a background check, the scandal came up. No one touched her. She was blacklisted. Dana didn't fare much better. She tried to land a position with a major competitor, but they already knew. Word had gotten around. Not from me, but from the way they'd burned every bridge on their way down. They thought I was pulling the strings, that I'd sabotaged their futures. But I hadn't said a word. So they orchestrated one last desperate plan. It happened at our company's annual shareholder meeting, my first one as majority owner. The stage was set, projections were up, Profits were booming and press from 3 states had gathered to cover the event. As I stepped up to speak, a voice rang out from the back of the room. "And Noah Green is a fraud." It was Haley. She marched down the aisle, heels striking like thunder, waving a thick folder in the air. "This," she said, holding the file high, "proves Noah's holding company was built on stolen software and fake front companies. He doesn't own green tech legally." Gasps, murmurs. Reporters turned. Board members froze. All eyes shifted toward me. I didn't flinch. I stepped back from the podium, reached into my jacket pocket, and pulled out my folder. One wrong move, and it all could have collapsed. My company, my name, everything I'd spent the last decade building. The moderator glanced at me. "Mr. Green, do you have a response?" I stepped toward the microphone, calm, measured, cold. Then I smiled. "Yes," I said. "I was actually hoping Haley would show up today. Because I brought something too." I held up a black folder. Inside, proof. Recorded calls, traced bank transfers and emails, all detailing how Haley had bribed a former employee to fabricate documents and plant fraudulent claims against me. What she didn't know was that I'd set the trap weeks earlier. I'd placed a fake file into the internal archives, labeled Ownership Vulnerability Confidential. I knew curiosity and desperation would get the best of her. She took the bait. I played a 14-second audio clip through the room's speaker system. Her voice rang out, clear and sharp. "If we leak this, it'll destroy him. Doesn't matter if it's real. By the time he proves it's fake, the damage will be done." Gasps filled the room. The moderator's face went pale. A senior board member muttered, "Oh my God!" I turned to Haley and locked eyes. "You taught me how to survive politics. I just learned how to win." Security was already walking toward her. She tried to speak, but the room wasn't listening anymore. They watched as she was escorted out. The applause was quiet at first, then it grew. The press started scribbling notes, cameras flashing again. Not for scandal, but for vindication. I stepped back to the podium. "This company was built in silence and betrayal," I said. "But starting today, it will stand for something else: transparency, integrity, and earned success." I thought that was the end. But the next morning, I found an envelope on my desk. No return address, just a gold-embossed seal I hadn't seen in over a decade. My hands froze. Inside, a single handwritten note. "We know who really funded Stoneark Systems. You're not the only ghost in this story. Let's meet, D." My heart stalled. There was only one person who ever signed notes that way. Daniel Carter, my ex-business partner, the man I thought had died in a fiery car crash 15 years ago. What if he was alive? That meant everything I thought I owned might not be mine alone. See, when I first built Stoneark, before it evolved into a holding giant, Daniel and I were just 2 broke tech junkies, coding in a storage unit after our shifts at the local electronics store. He was brilliant, ambitious, but reckless. He wanted shortcuts, I wanted foundations, and back then he tried to sell our earliest software to a foreign buyer, someone flagged in red on every federal watch list. I walked away. He disappeared. Or so I thought. But if he's back, then my next battle is coming fast. Red flags were everywhere. I refused to sell. And then, the crash. Daniel's car had gone off a bridge on a rainy night in Nashville. The police never found a body, just fragments of twisted metal and an empty driver's seat. I mourned. I moved on. I built Stoneark Systems from scratch. Or so I thought. Then that letter arrived. I followed the instructions to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Louisville. Midnight, fog hung low over cracked pavement. I parked and waited. He was already there. Same smirk. Same black leather jacket, like he hadn't disappeared for 15 years. "Long time, Noah," he said, stepping out of the shadows. "I thought you were dead," I replied. He laughed. "Almost. But watching you take the company solo, that gave me a reason to come back. Then he tossed a flash drive at my feet. What's this? I asked. Proof, he said, that your shell company, the one that owns everything, was originally seed funded through an account I created, which means, legally, I own 49% of Stoneark. My stomach nodded. That's not possible. You were gone. You signed over everything before. I forged the signature, he interrupted, eyes gleaming. And now I want in. Half the profits, half the power. He leaned in, voice sharp, or I go public. The board, the press, your investors, I'll burn it all down. The weight of his threat hit hard. I had just silenced betrayal, rebuilt my reputation, and now the ghost of my past had come back with a matchbook. But I didn't flinch. I looked him square in the eyes and smiled. You didn't come back for power, I said. You came back because you're broke. His smirk faltered. You wouldn't have waited 15 years if you had anything left. That flash drive? It's a bluff. He stepped forward. Want a bet? I reached into my coat and handed him a folder. I already knew you were alive. I've been watching the offshore account you used to fund Cynet since last year. And I bought it. 6 months ago. He blinked. You? What? You used a dead man's account, I said. And I used it to bury you, legally. You don't own 49% of anything. You don't even exist on paper anymore. Right then, the security lights in the warehouse snapped on. My private legal team entered from the side door. Daniel took a step back. You set me up, he whispered. No, I said, calmly. I finished the story you tried to erase. He didn't argue, he didn't threaten, just stood there, silent, as my attorneys escorted him out of the warehouse. I stood still, breathing deep. For the first time in years, I wasn't fighting shadows. I wasn't surviving betrayal. I was free. No family left. No friends from the past. But peace? Peace was finally mine. Back at my office the next morning, I pulled out an empty picture frame and slid in a clean white print. Black text, no logo, no decoration. They fired me, but I owned everything they worked for. Below that line, I added a second. And when the ghosts came back, I buried them too. Because sometimes revenge isn't loud. It's just permanent. If you've ever been counted out, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below. Tell me your story. Tell me when they overlooked you, when they laughed, when they thought you'd never rise. Because you're not alone. I was the guy in the corner cubicle they forgot about, the one they fired without hesitation. But silence is not weakness. And patience, it's power. If my story struck a nerve, hit that subscribe button. Let's build something here. A space for people who've been underestimated and came back sharper, stronger, and unstoppable. To anyone stuck in the shadows right now, I have one piece of advice. Play the long game. You don't need applause to make progress. Build quietly. Learn relentlessly. Keep receipts. And when the time comes, stand tall in your truth. Because the world underestimates quiet storms until they arrive. I didn't need to shout. I just needed to be ready. And so do you. This wasn't just my revenge. It was a lesson. Sometimes your best move is letting them think they've won. Until you're ready to show them you were the boss all along. Now tell me, what's the power they don't see in you yet?